just to ask you to think of a specific habitat, a habitat that could hold a real rarity, on a county level. You wouldn't think of something like this kind of seed would be the last thing that would come to the forefront of your mind. You'd be thinking more of ancient woodland or rugged coastlines or flower-rich downland, not some agricultural farmland in the middle of Nottinghamshire. Yet this particular habitat is home to one of the county's rarest moths. There's a few signs of spring. Hawthorn in a couple of places along here just starting to come into leaf, and it's all starting to bud up nicely now. A few more weeks the leaves will all be out along Ingram Lane here at Sutton on Trent. But what I need to do now before those leaves appear is try and find one of these rare county moths. And tucked away along the hedgerows here on Ingram Lane at Sutton on Trent is the target species featured in this video. This is a small eggar and this is a male. It's actually very well camouflaged, sat where it is here on the end of this. This is actually hawthorn by the looks of it. The larvae do prefer blackthorn. This is one of the county's rarest breeding species, extremely rare and only known from a handful of sites, but in recent years the only sites it's been known from was along Ingram Lane here at Sutton on Trent. It must occur in other hedges locally, certainly top side of sort of South Muscombe and either side of the Trent. It's declined nationally over the years as well, and it seems to have disappeared from many of its former haunts, and whether the decline of this moth nationally is down to changes in our climate or farming practices, it's hard to say. But from the bit of evidence I've seen here at Ingram Lane, I can't blame the flailing of hedges. It seems to have no effect on this moth at all. But it's just about holding on here as a breeding species in Nottinghamshire, and we could really do with some survey work to ascertain just where this moth is found. I think it is found more widely, and the best way to survey it is to walk along hedgerows containing hawthorn and blackthorn during the spring and the early summer and look for the conspicuous larval webs, and that's something that I did last year in the spring. And I walked along this lane here and found 4 different larval webs, and I was extremely pleased at that. Small eggar is a most attractive moth, and despite its name having the word small in it, you may well be surprised that this moth is actually quite small. If I put the famous grubby forefinger at the side of it, you can see there it's little more than an inch long from head to wingtip. But it's a beautifully coloured moth, chocolate ground colour to the forewings, usually a decent dusting of silver or grey scales, especially towards the edge of the forewing there, and then that white central dot and a weak cross line going across the wing. It's a lovely thing, and it's had quite an interesting, if not at times worrying, history, but it seems to have bounced back in the last few years. Now, all of the county's recent records have come from Sutton-on-Trent, Besthorpe and Collingham areas, and all those 3 sites are a few miles north of Newark and either side of the Trent. Larval webs were reported from along here in 2002 and 2003 and I believe 2004, and then there was a gap in the records, and then it turned up in 2007. Worryingly, it then went missing for 15 years, or just over 15 years, before larval webs were again found along Ingraham Lane here at Sutton-on-Trent in 2020 and 2021. I came here again in 2022 and found those 4 larval webs which are featured on this channel in the spring of 2022. So it's obviously doing very, very well here, but why it's doing so well here and not elsewhere in the county or elsewhere up and down the Trent Valley is something of a mystery. Now I've been able just to twist that twig that this moth was resting on round a little bit, so now you can see it in all its glory. And although it is rather dull coloured, it's a dull chocolate brown, it is a lovely moth. Beautiful moth. And boy, how many moth trappers in both Nottinghamshire and elsewhere in the UK would love to see one of these drop in at the trap. I know I certainly would, but unless you're trapped here, there's no chance, or very little chance. It flies early in February. I've had these hatch out at home before. It's usually early to mid-February when they start and hatch out. It's a lovely species. Why it's maintained a status here in this innocuous part of Nottinghamshire is anybody's guess. And the numbers, it's interesting, the variations in numbers. It must be prone to heavy infestation and parasitisation from time to time. That parasitisation must last a number of years, but there could well be some element of under-recording. Many of the webs that are reported to the county recorder are actually reported via moth trappers, who in turn have been told of them by friends and relatives who've been walking the dog or walking the country lanes around this part of Nottinghamshire and have noticed the conspicuous larval webs and then reported them. So it's important that people make an effort, really. We could do with ascertaining the status, or a more accurate status, of this moth, certainly in Nottinghamshire. Well, that was successful in the end. I hope that 2023 is as good a year for Small Eggar as 2022 was. All will be revealed within a few months' time, depending when I come back here and have a survey to see how many larval webs there are this year and compare them to last year. All being well, could be another good year for the Small Eggar.